Welcome to Behind the Line, where we pull back the curtain on the challenges facing first responders and frontline workers. The work you do is unique, and so are the stresses that go with it. Join me as we tackle key issues to reduce risks for burnout, and as we work to support you in doing the job you love without sacrificing being the kind of person you want to be. Hey there, and welcome back to Behind the Line. I'm your host, Lindsay Foss. If you're new to Behind the Line, what you should know about me is that I'm a clinical counselor specializing in trauma therapy. And after over a decade working with first responders and frontline workers around issues like burnout, compassion fatigue, PTSD, and related OSIs, I've become a passionate wellness advocate and educator for those who sacrifice so much for our communities out on the front lines. Behind the Line is a place for us to talk about the real life behind the scenes challenges facing you on the front lines. I created this podcast with the hope of bringing easy access to skills for wellness, allowing you to find greater sustainability both on the job and off. Welcome back, everyone. We are in our summer series where we're just hearing stories from various amazing first responders and frontline workers. I'm so grateful to join you again with an amazing guest, and I can hardly wait for you guys to hear it. Let's dive in. Welcome, Ash. It's so great to have you here with me. I'm really excited. I have wanted to have a social worker on to represent for that kind of piece of frontline work for a really long time, and we haven't been able to coordinate it until now. So I'm so excited that you're here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
That's awesome. Okay, so I want us to kind of chat about your story and your experience of frontline work, kind of your perspective on what has been really great about it, what's been really hard about it, and any insights you have for those who are in it, new in it, and are trying to figure out how to exist sustainably in it. Whatever wisdom or insight you've incurred over your time would be fantastic.
Absolutely. No, it's a pleasure to be here, and it's been truly a pleasure to work in Frontline. I right now, since 4 months ago, I have moved to a kind of a managerial position, but it's still fresh.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah.
Now, maybe can you start by telling us a bit about your story? What brought you into frontline work? What brought you into working as a social worker in hospital setting?
For
And any of
sure.
the backstory there?
Of course, yeah, for sure. So I do have actually an unusual background. I am a physicist. I'm a
Okay.
biomedical physicist and a social worker. So I started with physics. I got my bachelor of physics in solid state physics in Iran. I did a lot of computer programming and all of that. Then I got a master's in Memorial University of Newfoundland in biophysics. So I studied, some certain type of cells that you could actually study with magnetic field and all that, and that's basically where the physics come from. Kind of similar to the cells that you can see used in mRNA vaccines and all these other types.
Yeah.
And then from there, I started my PhD in medical physics. I was
Wow.
studying basically, we all have these little tiny strokes in our lives, but they're 1 millionth of a meter in diameter. So we can't really see it in an MRI machine. So what I did is I was trying to, instead of taking one image, took multiple and used my computer programming and physics and all of that to see if we can actually detect the magnetic changes that these tiny blood clots can make. And as a result, we can predict if somebody will have dementia 10, 15 years down
Wow.
down on the line. So I think that's a very interesting thing because it can give people autonomy. It can give
Yeah.
people a chance to choose before they
Mm-hmm.
are clinically diagnosed.
Yeah.
That's where I started learning about human brain, about how we process psychological trauma,
Mm-hmm.
about aging, about all of these different intersections that play into our brain. And instead of studying subjects, I decided to work with folks, and
Yeah.
that's when I quit my PhD. Worked with folks frontline with LGBTQ folks for quite some time in school system. Then I worked in Calgary Communities Against Sexual Abuse, helping folks who have experienced sexual violence, and then I got my bachelor and master's of social work. And in that work, I studied a lot of what I studied was basically masculinity and gender.
Hmm.
how people process trauma based on this social conditioning of gender and what is allowed and what is not allowed for them, and kind of
Yeah.
can we open that up a little bit. So as a result, a lot of my work has been with in areas that hurt men end up.
Mhm.
Homelessness, addiction, all of these different areas. That's how I ended up in the hospital. And then our unit
Mm.
turned into a COVID positive unit. So a lot of, again, trauma, grief, and all of that. And
Totally.
then after that, I worked for quite some time in a geriatric unit. So a lot of it has, all of it has come together, aging and
Mhm.
trauma, and then working with people frontline, which is the true joy of all of this journey. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's the longest story of how I got to frontline.
Wow. I mean, I think I only knew this one little snippet of your story
Mhm.
walking in the door, so this is really cool to kinda get the full backstory. I had no idea. It's fun. And you're right, it is a very unusual story. You're coming from this very, like, theoretical place into the very practical, nitty-gritty, very frontline efforts of
Yeah,
applications of that theoretical kind of framework.
absolutely, absolutely.
Very cool.
It's very interesting. It's very humbling and very interesting. Yeah,
I bet it would be a mixed bag. I'm
yeah.
super curious how your like physics-based theoretical brain feels about being in some of the nitty-gritty frontline work on days where it is just a lot of like pressure and demand and people.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. That's a good question. The yeah, I was never kind of quite a good fit in that physics side of things. That like
Mm, okay.
so I was always a people's person. That part really helps.
Yeah.
But as a social worker, I think it, being a physicist helped me a lot because
Mm,
as social workers, we do provide a lot of frontline work, but within the context of systems.
mhm.
And it always helps to have that engineer mind of being able to put things in the context of systems and yeah, and being a grad student for quite some time, I'm very good with the spreadsheets. And as you know, with the demand of frontline, we all need more spreadsheets.
Yeah, we all do. Excel's getting a lot of business these
That's
days.
it. That's it. So a
Yeah,
lot of it, I find
totally.
that overall it helped. But there was a
Yeah.
lot of learning, from looking at somebody as a subject of a study to looking at somebody as an equal and that humane moment and that the
Mhm.
spiritual moment that humans connect, especially
Hmm.
in a hospital when people are
Yeah.
in pain, right?
Yeah.
It's a very, very humbling and human moment, which is again to me very spiritual.
I mean, it sounds like you're able to marry some really cool pieces that I actually think are really important. And I say similar things in my work too. So I find that when I see a lot of learning and developing clinicians who are like interns and early in their work, they often kind of come from one of two places. And I actually think I see this in the medical profession as well, where they either really love people and they got into it because they want to help, but they're not very good at placing the reason for why they're doing a thing into a framework for why that makes sense.
Yeah,
So they really just want to like love on people and care for people, but they're kind of doing it left, right, and center without
yeah,
like a rationale or an anchoring to something that feels meaningful. And then on the flip side, I see the people who are really strong at having the rationale, who really like to see how things work and get the framework piece, but have zero people skills
yeah,
and don't know how to like bring that down to being like effective. And I
absolutely.
think I see that too in the medical profession where I see like the doctors that have zero bedside manner, but they really know how your brain and body work, or like they
Yeah,
see the problem. They just have no ability to like
absolutely.
connect. And then there's probably those who are really good at the connecting, but don't necessarily grasp fully some of the higher up level. And so it sounds like you're kind of doing this marrying
Yeah.
of both things that I imagine would make you very effective at your work.
I would like to I would like to think
I would
so.
like to
Yes.
think so. Yeah. Fair enough.
But
Fair enough.
I agree with you. I think there is a little bit of coping in that when we
Mhm.
distance ourselves from our clients and when we become
Yeah.
the expert and take the role of the expert, put the hat on and don't want to feel it with them, right?
Mhm.
Because I'm the
Yeah,
expert, I know what's going on, and that distancing sometimes is a way that people cope to survive in this work that is emotionally exhausting. But the
totally.
word of caution is we are working with a human, right? And
Mhm.
they don't want experts. Sometimes they just want somebody who actually can sit there
Yeah,
and level
that
with them and feel
connection.
their pain with them. And the other part is like, yeah, people can actually focus on getting the work done and all of that, which is beautiful to
Mm-hmm.
see that commitment. But sometimes, we just drag people out of the river, do the CPR, go to the next person, to
Mm-hmm.
the next person. And sometimes we have to pause and ask ourselves, who's pushing these folks in the river? Maybe if
Yeah.
I went upstream and stop those
Yes.
issues that create these
Mm-hmm.
struggles. A lot of
Yeah.
my work around masculinity was exactly this. Instead of
Mm.
focusing on, but not instead, actually, in addition to focusing on
Yeah.
providing service to people who have been hurt, we have to stop people who are hurting others.
Yeah.
We have to stop people who are, in other words, pushing folks down
Yeah.
this.
We need to intervene earlier.
Absolutely. So a lot of
Yeah.
the work that I've done was around like working with young men in particular, about
Mm.
challenging the idea of what it means to be a man,
Yeah.
challenging like kind of building the idea of consent and all of this stuff to stop the harm before it happens. And
I
I
love
kind of
it.
feel like, yeah, my physicist mind goes there for healthcare as well. There's a lot we can do for people if they have better housing, if they have access to
Yeah.
insulin, if they have, if
Mhm.
somebody lives in an emergency shelter for 2 years that was meant to be an emergency, their brain is in the state of emergency for 2 years.
Mhm.
What does that do to the brain? What does that do
Yeah.
to someone's coping and
Yeah.
all the issues that it causes? We traumatize
Totally.
people. And that's my thing. We gotta go upstream and stop folks from pushing folks down the stream.
Yes.
But yeah.
I mean, no big problem to solve, right?
Yeah.
Like easy peasy. Uh, so
Just
okay, right? Like just
exactly.
no big deal. Just do
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
When you imagined entering into social work, given that you came from a background that is like a bit of a different place to come from to enter
Yeah,
into that kind of
for
work,
sure.
what did you imagine it was going to be like? Like, what did you anticipate was going to bring you satisfaction? And then what did you think the challenges were going to be? What were your predictions
Hmm.
about that?
Hmm. That's a good question. Well, I think I was naive for quite some time, and I didn't think how much paperwork would be involved in social work. Those forms
Preach.
back to
Yeah.
back.
Oh my
Yes,
goodness. True
just
story. Yeah.
oh my god. Yeah, I didn't expect that. There's a
Yeah.
lot of paperwork. But I really didn't know, because again, as you know, social work is just such a broad field. You can do one-on-one counseling and provide healing
Mhm.
in that environment. You could, I'm more on the practical side of social work. Sometimes I just like,
Mhm.
get, which again makes sense from my background as well.
Yeah.
Find the systems, find
Do the
things, get things
resourcing.
done, and all of that as well.
Yeah.
um, but a lot of times it's that's what I enjoyed about social work, the fact that you could
Mhm.
do it your way and you could do it in so many different ways.
Hmm.
um, this surprise, to be honest, one of the biggest surprises I've had since I started working in a hospital is how much a lot of the newer doctors and residents appreciate social work.
Hmm.
I didn't expect that. I didn't expect
Yeah.
folks to actually sit down and try to consult with you as an equal provider, as an equal member of the
Mm.
team, and I
Mhm.
really really admire that. I think
Mm.
we have gone to the place to understand counselors, occupational therapists, physios,
Yeah.
nurses, dietitians, social workers, we all provide in our own way.
Yeah.
I'm
We all bring
Persian and I
value.
speak Persian, so I want to just quote Rumi. It's like a small piece that says, "The moon spreads light. It lightens the moon spreads light. Sorry, the moon spreads light. It lightens the meadow and makes the dogs bark.
Mm.
Everybody weaves the dress that fits their nature best. The
Mhm.
moon spreads its beauty, and the dogs fulfill their duty." I think we need
Mhm.
to realize that we all contribute in our own way in this grand scheme of things. And all of
Yeah.
us have something to do to improve patient care, to improve people's lives around us.
I
And
love that that is the surprise.
yeah,
I would be surprised by that too, and
yeah,
it's a good surprise. Like, I
it's a
think
very good surprise.
it's very common in these kinds of industries that everyone is kind of pulling their own direction, but we're
Yeah,
not necessarily pulling together. And it's really cool to experience places where no, we're actually like pulling together, we're complementing each other's work,
absolutely.
and we're collaborating and moving this in a direction that feels cooperative and meaningful for all of us.
Very
Bringing the
much so.
best of what
Yeah.
I do, the best of what you do, and moving that together. That's magic.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's what I really love about my work in the front lines, like being able to work with
Mm,
folks that are brilliant. Like if
yeah.
we think about all these expertise that they are bringing to the table, all this education,
Mm,
all these experiences to provide good care for the patient, right? And
totally.
I just really, really love that focus on making
Mm,
people's lives better, making improving their health, and
yeah.
working together as a team. Yeah,
I
ups
feel
and
like I'm
downs,
gonna
but
get a
yeah.
lot of yeah, I feel like I'm gonna get a lot of emails asking where you work so that people can come there too. Because I don't know that that is as common of an
Yeah,
experience as I wish it were. I think that
absolutely.
that's
Yeah.
unfortunately still a thing that's coming. Although I'm always excited to hear that it sounds like it's coming more. Like the stigma around mental health, the stigma around like homelessness and
Absolutely.
addictions and some of these
It's
pieces
changing.
is changing, right? Like we're
Hmm.
starting to have a better understanding of like a traumagenic kind of understanding of these things that
Hmm.
people don't just
Hmm.
become addicted out of the blue, people don't just become homeless out of thin
Yeah.
air, that like experiences shape the direction of the things and we can intervene differently and differently strategically.
Yeah.
And I think as that's coming, there is more possibility for teams like this to exist that do see
Absolutely.
the value in the complementary ways that we can engage in our roles,
Hmm.
but it's still a little there.
Absolutely.
It's still
Absolutely.
coming.
It's
Yeah,
still a work in progress.
a work in progress. Well, and
Which
I
is
think that that's
exciting, right? Because
it
that basically means we
is.
all get to play a role in it. If it
Yeah.
was already made, if it was already done, then we wouldn't be able to actually shape it and mold it the way we want.
Mhm.
That's why I love progress in general. We all get to
Mhm.
play a role in it.
It's that co-creating kind of piece, right? Like
Absolutely.
we're all a role in shaping and making it what we're going to make it. And I
Absolutely.
love when we can anchor to that. Like I think
Yeah.
that sometimes the challenge with things like burnout is we are so tired of having to
Hmm.
contribute to making it different. We just want to get there and have it be different because this is exhausting. But when we can recognize that this process means we have some ownership in crafting what the end result will look like, I think we get to have a different sense of power in it instead of powerlessness to it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I
Yeah.
think that's especially for a lot of folks who are in this field, who, whether they were drawn to this field to frontline work because of their histories of past trauma, or they just were in the field and exposed to so much trauma, I think
Yeah.
that piece of feeling a little bit of control over the process
Hmm.
is huge, right?
Yeah.
Because trauma, like the core concept is loss of power,
Yeah.
right? And when we actually empower people back and say, actually, yeah, it's not perfect, but you do have a role in it. That's
Yeah.
why I applied for this like other like kind of managerial position in an institution where most of the managers are medical people.
Hmm.
Because I think we social workers, dietitians, whatever, allied health counselors, all types of healers, we have to
Hmm.
take ownership of the healthcare system too. It is our system,
Yeah.
whether we want it or not. We're going to go to these systems as clients, as patients. So we better actually
Mhm.
go to decision making positions and make a decision. This is my system as much as it is doctor's system, and I'm ready to take it, and I'm ready to
I
take
love
my my space and actually
it.
try to contribute, because I think healing people from a social perspective, from a mental health perspective, matters.
Yeah.
We don't live in a society where people get injured, come to the hospital, they're medically healed, and they leave.
Mhm.
There is a lot going on in people's lives, and we have to be there
Totally.
for them to provide that
Yeah.
holistic care. But yeah, that's where I'm coming from.
I love it. I mean, I think that you're like speaking to this piece that my heart loves so much. We did a series last year, last spring, called the Dare to Lead series. And it was
Hmm.
essentially we were following Brene Brown's book, Dare to Lead. And we
Hmm.
were walking through the basic principles of what she describes in the book. And the effort was this piece about like the one of the primary challenges I hear as a clinician who works with first responders and frontline workers is that the thing that is taking people out of the work the most actually
Hmm.
has very little to do with the frontline engagement and more to do with the bureaucratic systems that
Yeah,
feel like they just squeeze them dry until they can't anymore, right?
absolutely.
And
Yeah,
you're nodding like you totally know that
yeah.
that's real, because it is. And so
Absolute
we did this
1000%.
Dare to Lead series because I kept saying like the challenge is we can't change it, like we can't convince the people who are already in those positions to just be different.
Yeah,
We have to become the change we want to see in the world.
that's it.
So we need to become leaders who are aware of mental health, who are aware of burnout, who speak this language, who grasp the concepts. And then we need to be willing to move up into the positions that then filter that down
That's
to
it.
make
Yeah,
the change. And
exactly.
so we talked about this as this idea of like, how do we raise up a generation of leaders who are informed differently and anchored differently to these
Hmm.
pieces to shift it? And it's exactly what you're doing. That's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
cool.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I agree. I think it's very important for us, for frontline workers, to be in
Hmm.
leadership position because we've done the work. So when
Yeah.
my staff right now that I'm like in a manager position, so now I'm the manager for all the social workers and dietitians in the area that I worked in.
Hmm.
But now when my staff email me, when folks email me and ask for time off, or when they call sick, I know kind of
Yeah.
what's going on. I know the stress
Yeah.
and pressure of that work.
Totally.
I know that you give your job everything you've got and then you go home and you have nothing left and just want to sit on
Yeah.
the couch. I know that feeling.
Yeah.
Um, so I can empathize with them. I
Yeah.
can actually see that they are carrying some of that pain from our clients. I am
Mhm.
humbled by the nurses, by the folks who have been working throughout the pandemic.
Yeah.
Very, very
Yeah.
frontline. These folks have been carrying, the burden of the no, I don't want to call it the burden, but the pressure of the pandemic. They've been
Yeah.
facing it front and
Yeah.
center.
Totally.
So being us being administrators later on, we can be in a position to support folks, and we can
Yeah.
just do the boring work of change, sitting in committees and writing
Mhm.
policies. Not exciting, but that's how change
Mhm.
happens sometimes.
Well, but even it is how change happens sometimes. I
Yeah,
We had an interview with someone else a couple weeks ago, and they were sharing about how, to take a day off, and it was kind of like I saw some really hard things yesterday, and I can't
yeah,
do well for people today given what I have lived through, and I just need a beat to get back together. And their employer required a doctor's note to legitimize that day off
yeah,
work. And that is grounded in policy that makes that employer ask for that. But even to be able to shift some of those policy based expectations to adapt and recognize that people do get to say, I need a beat because I can't do right by the people you're asking me to
absolutely.
serve, and to reduce the pressure points on them to have to feel like they justify or prove themselves
Yeah,
as being sick enough to call in that day when they've been showing up for overtime left, right, and center to manage all
that's
of
it.
these staffing issues,
That's it.
right? Like, how do we balance it? How do we as leaders offer some buffer?
And uh, I will get that to that in a second, but
Yeah.
exactly to add to what you said, that also talks about validating illness only from one perspective,
Yeah.
only from one medical perspective. Are you sick enough for your doctor to write the note versus are you sick enough for your counselor to say, I think, yeah, you need to take a day off? These are two separate
Mhm.
things and come from two different um, like systems of
Yeah.
value, right? And
Totally.
we have to hold both of them to the same level,
Yeah.
because one already has incredible power.
Mhm.
And speaking of power, I think that's what I see my role as somebody who's
Mhm.
in a place of position of leadership right now. I have a little bit of power, not a
Yeah.
lot of power yet,
Sure.
but a
Yeah.
little bit, but more than I did
Totally.
before. Right? I
Yeah.
sit in meetings that I wasn't invited to attend before, and I
Mhm.
think that's what it comes from. We need to be ready to take some
Mm.
heat on behalf of others. We
Yeah.
need to be able to say, I'm going to stand up for my staff because they need to take a day off for mental health. And if that means the organization or whatever organization has to spend a little bit more money, sure. Because I think these folks are
Mhm.
worth it.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
biggest asset any organization, from a small nonprofit to a huge hospital, have is their staff.
Yeah.
The most expensive thing in a hospital is not the MRI machine, it is
Mhm.
not the building, it's the
Yeah.
staff who are running it. We
Mhm.
can run without a lot of the hardware things, but we cannot run a
Yeah.
day without nurses. So
Yeah.
we need to actually start treating
Mhm.
folks differently, because otherwise they
Yeah.
don't have to work for us. They don't have to work in
Well, that's
in
the
these
thing.
environments, right?
Well, and I
And
think
they're
that's the thing that we're
humans.
seeing. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what we do is that's not going upstream, right? Because
Mhm.
we shouldn't create more clients, more patients by burning out the folks who are working in the system. Because
Yeah,
that way we are just pushing them down the river for somebody else. They become somebody else's
totally.
problem. Sorry,
Yeah,
not
we're
problem,
just feeding it
client.
into our own system. Yeah,
That's it. We
totally.
are bringing people back. And I think that's part of the issue. We need to recognize that we got to go upstream. We need to look at 10 step ahead rather
Yeah,
than who's my client right now, what I need to do right now. These folks are, you know, are
yeah.
the biggest asset that we have, and we have to treat them as such.
Ash, we need more yous in the world. That's what we need. It's so
That's
good.
very kind
It's
of you. No,
so
I
good.
am.
No, it's that framework. It's absolutely that framework.
Yeah,
And I think one of the challenges I see is some of the like older school managers and bureaucratic systems kinds of people who end up in those positions don't tend to have that framework. And even when they have done the job, they almost like lose empathy as a result
yeah.
of that rather than carrying that empathy in
I've
with
done
them.
it, so you
And
have to do it too.
right, like it's the
Yeah,
grunt work, it's how you pay your dues, like that kind of BS piece
yeah,
sucks. And then
yeah.
there's also this like kind of power piece that gets to people's heads, and once they're in it they have a hard time kind of seeing the forest for the trees anymore.
Absolutely. And
Yeah,
I think that's it. Right? Like we have to stay true to what brings us to this work. And for
yeah.
me, it is public service. I'm
Mhm.
imperfect,
Yeah.
like the person next to me, all of us, right? But the thing is, who am I there to serve? Am I there to keep the
Mhm.
status quo that is not functioning? The COVID
Yeah.
pandemic showed us very clearly that we have big gaps. Before that,
Mhm.
there were a lot of other things too, right? Like, am I there to make a positive change? And I'm not there forever. In no
Yeah.
position, everything in life is temporary. And that's
Mhm.
the way I cope with the pain of sometimes existence and frontline and
Mhm.
everything. Being like, yeah, everything in life is temporary. No pain will last
Mhm.
forever,
Yes.
and no moment will, right? As hard as
Mhm.
it might be. But can I make sure that in that temporary time that I am put in charge, I am put on that
Mhm.
desk, on that behind that desk, can I make sure that I give something a little bit better to the next person and then they can make it even better? Can I
Hmm.
improve it just a little bit, whatever my
Yeah.
contribution is? I
Yeah.
sing my own song and the next person comes out and
Yeah.
sing their song. And the beauty of this world is that some songs will be remembered, and I hope mine will be remembered too.
I love it.
You guys have heard me talk about the Beating the Breaking Point Resilience Training Series on this show a bunch of times before. For the next 2 weeks, we are offering this program at a significant discount, and I hope that you'll take us up on the opportunity to join in, check it out, and develop a really bomb-proof resilience program for yourself, a personalized skill set that you can use to help manage burnout and support reducing risks for things like PTSD and other occupational stress injuries. It is an amazing program that I poured blood, sweat, and tears into in an effort to make it all of the pieces that you miss in your training that are really key to be able to manage your mental health and wellness while doing a job that is impossibly hard. So whether you are early in your career and you want to be preventative, or if you are in the midst of it and you are teetering on burnout, or if you are already well down the burnout trail, this program offers something that will benefit you. It will help you build skill sets to build back or build up resilience capacities that you may not have thought of before. My hope for you is that you will take us up on this opportunity to check it out. We include things like a full money back guarantee for a period of time to ensure that what you get feels like it meets your needs. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me and let me know. We also offer this training program for large groups of people, for staffs and workplaces. So reach out and connect further if you want to know more about that. Our $100 off deal on the Beating the Breaking Point program is available from Tuesday, July 5th, all the way until 11:59 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Thursday, July 14th. You have until then to sign up and enjoy this amazing deal. And take this opportunity to invest in your wellness for your benefit and the benefit of those who care about you, as well as those you serve and serve alongside. And as always, I so appreciate if you would share this with others. I'm curious on the really hard days, the days where you've been exposed to some hard things, on the days that it feels hard to feel anchored to some of those hope points and kind of truths that you ground to. What helps you stay connected to that? What helps you come back to it?
That's a good question. Yes, there are a lot of hard days, a lot of days that are beyond any human's capacity to take. We
Mm-hmm.
are not hardwired to hold a tablet to become the embodiment of somebody's family, so the family can say goodbye to their loved one
Totally.
because there's a pandemic and there's no vaccine for it. But sometimes we have to.
Absolutely.
There is no
Yeah.
choice, and I would much rather be that person,
Mm-hmm.
right, than not. How do you cope with it? It's, first is being real about it and the fact that
Yeah.
this is beyond any human's capacity. So if
Yeah.
I'm reacting the way that I'm reacting, that's normal. That's how a human is supposed
Mm-hmm.
to react, and not buy into this savior culture of I have to
Mm-hmm.
sacrifice myself to save other people. I am no one's savior. I am a flawed individual myself. I need a
Mm-hmm.
savior myself.
Yeah.
So I think it's approaching it with that humility and recognizing that,
Totally.
yeah, the pain is real. I am privileged to be able to live in Vancouver. So there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of, space, a lot of places that I can go and be close to nature to remind myself of the bigger picture. That's where my spirituality comes from. Recognizing
Mm.
how the forest, everybody's contributing in their own way, and it has been there for millions of years, way, way
Mm.
before I was there.
Yeah,
Just put things in perspective.
totally.
So for
Mhm.
me, it's a drawing on my ancestral wisdom too, and reading Rumi or playing, do whatever heals you. But first
Yeah.
thing for me is recognizing that I need healing.
Hmm.
There is a
Mhm.
harm done where
Yeah.
every time that I have to send a client to a shelter, there is a
Mhm.
harm that I take. It's
Yeah.
never good news.
Yeah.
Sleeping in a mat in a warehouse is never dignified, and it hurts
Mhm.
me that we have a society that some people
Mhm.
have to live this way,
Mhm.
right? But first thing, recognizing that when we are next to other people who are
Yeah.
harmed, we are also harmed. Again, another piece of Persian poetry, that ancestral wisdom, is talking about how basically, like, us as humans, we are different parts of the same body. If one
Hmm.
body part aches, the other ones will become restless. We
Yeah.
cannot see ourselves as individuals separated. We are all
Yeah.
connected. At the end of the
Totally.
day, when I see the pain of another person, I
Mhm.
get impacted. And
Mhm.
being real about it, especially because a lot of time that goes against the social order of gender for people,
Mhm.
right?
Yep,
Being
naming it.
able to go beyond it and actually recognize the pain and process and deal with it and sit with it.
Mhm.
For me, that's the most important thing, rather than pushing, pushing,
Yeah.
pushing, and then I'm done. I can't do it
Yeah.
anymore.
I think you're naming this really important thing that we've talked about on this show quite a lot, which is really that fundamentally the hardest part of most things, including therapy. And like, certainly that's the hardest part of my job. And I think the hardest part of solving any problem is first having awareness of the problem. Like, if we avoid naming it, if we avoid calling it a problem, then we can't fix it. Right.
Absolutely.
And so having awareness that this impacts me, being willing
Hmm.
to identify and own that this is true, without like judgment
Yeah,
or, fear that that means that I'm somehow weak or, incapable or whatever, is the biggest, hardest part of the job. And
absolutely.
right. And from that flows the capacity to then potentially do something with it and try to be intentional about how we interact with it.
Hmm.
But it starts with that piece. And I often say on this show that the challenge about frontline work, you said it too, that like no one's hardwired for this. And so the thing I often say is nobody comes out unscathed.
Absolutely.
There is no brain ever created,
Yeah,
ever born that is made to do the things that you guys are doing and see all that you see and remain unchanged by it. It's not possible.
yeah,
So when
absolutely.
we know that, when we like normalize that, then we take some of the pressure off of somehow being required to somehow be better than our brains were made to be.
Absolutely. There is no better. this is it, right? And we just have to, it's like, instead of trying to squeeze people to fit into a box that was not made for them, we have to
Mhm.
change the box. We have to,
Yes.
sometimes, I think that's the most important part. We have to just change
Mhm.
the way, as you said, the way we look at it. And right back at you, same thing, when you folks, the counselors, when they sit in that room with us and hear so much of the trauma, things that sometimes people haven't disclosed to anybody else,
Mhm.
there is, there is that secondhand trauma, there is that vicarious
Yeah,
trauma, right? And
totally.
again, unless we get real with it and recognize that
Mhm.
whoever you are, whatever your
Yeah,
social location is, nobody is hardwired to do this
yeah,
without being severely impacted by it. And
yeah.
there's plenty of science to prove that too. It's,
Mhm.
it's, you're not broken, you're not flawed. If you are aching, if you're frontline and you're struggling, if I could do things all over again, the only thing I would do differently, no, a lot of things I would do differently, but one of them would be reaching out to others. Because when I
Yeah.
did, authentically, with an open heart to actually hear their side of pain and story as well,
Mhm.
then I started realizing it's not just me, but we are all
Mhm.
sitting in these silos, being like, oh, it's just me. Maybe I'm
Yeah,
not strong enough. No,
totally.
it's all
Yeah,
of us who are hurt by the pain of other people. And
yeah.
and for me, there is a lot of, we are familiar with power over. This is the
Mhm.
primary way of power being administered in our society. People have power and they, you know, uh, ex- kind of express it over somebody. But this is about power with. This is about a
Mhm.
different type of power. It's about us, not
Yeah,
me, but us,
yeah.
right? And hopefully we can, in our path to healing from trauma,
Mm.
or in our path to living better with trauma, we reach that power within,
Mm.
that the one that we kind of find inside, and try to,
Yeah.
cope with it, and live with it, and grow and move, and all of that. Just like,
Mm.
you look at the beautiful trees in the West Coast, and each one of them represent their own traumas. You can see that, like,
Mm.
whoa, there was like a big storm,
Yeah.
and this branch, but that's what makes them beautiful, right? I
Mhm.
don't want to romanticize trauma, but all of these different moves, it just shows the story of survival.
Yeah.
We all survive, and we are not supposed to survive unaffected, right?
Totally. I also love this piece you said about connecting. And I want to dig into it just a little bit deeper. And this
Mhm.
wasn't on my list of questions. So feel free to tell me, Lindsay, I don't know, or I don't have an answer.
Yeah.
I didn't prepare for this one. But you said this piece about when I started to connect and the kind of we-ness of it, that we recognize that we're not all these independent silos that are suffering independently of one another, that we do have this collective experience. I find that for a lot of people, they either don't connect in part because they are worried about being a burden, um, or worried about how, especially if it's coworkers who kind of get similarly the challenges they face, they worry about how they might be perceived then as not capable by people
Mhm.
who really need them
Mhm.
to show up and have their back. Right. So it's not even like about, I worry that people won't see me as capable, but I worry that they may not trust that I'm going to be there for them in
Mm.
the moment that they need us to be ready to do
Yeah.
a thing, right? Like, when the next emergency that walks in the door, can they rely on me if they know I'm struggling? So I hear that a lot. On the flip side, I also hear a lot of people share that when they do share with coworkers who get it, it often takes on this very venting kind of form that doesn't always feel helpful. And so I'm curious what your experience has been and how you've gone about shaping social connection around this kind of stuff that
Mhm.
feels meaningfully helpful as
Yeah.
opposed to venti or just avoidant.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great question. I think, so. Part of it for me is like, when people always say, "Oh, like, if I reach out to so and so, what would they think about it?" I ask them, if your colleague reached out
Mhm.
to you, would you be upset about helping them? Or,
Right.
there is joy in helping others.
Totally.
But, as you said, a lot of times these conversations tend to become like just venting. And to me, that's like an indicator of a bigger issue. We don't have mental
Mhm.
health covered in this country. In our healthcare
Mhm.
system, we do not cover mental health.
Yeah.
um, you know Even at work, I think we have to do, in workplaces, we have to provide more. I think that venting, it just tells me how much pressure has been built underneath,
Yeah.
that people just look for an opportunity to just talk about it. But I'm not sure if us becoming each other's therapist is the goal of connecting. I
Yeah.
think to me, the connecting is about solidarity and recognizing I see you struggling and you see me too. So we are going to show up for each other and have each other's
Yeah.
back, including in this moment, including
Mhm.
in all our realness and humanity.
Yeah.
Rather than I'm just there having your back just because of this certain job. Because,
Mhm.
I feel like in North America, we do identify with our jobs quite a lot. People,
Yeah.
second question they ask oftentimes is like, what do you do?
Mhm.
That's way more than that. We are way
Yeah.
more than that.
Yes.
We are also humans. Most important, we are also many, many things. And a firefighter or a social worker or a doctor or a
Yeah.
paramedic, right? So I think it's important to connect on that human level. I'm not only here to have your back as a paramedic, as a social worker.
Mhm.
And my team, everywhere at Frontline I work, they always knew you can come
Yeah.
to me and talk to me, and I will do my best to kind of, organize the thoughts a little bit together, and
Yeah.
then, encourage you to actually work with professionals. The prof-
Mhm.
the colleague is not meant to be replacing a counselor. You still need
Mhm.
to actually get with, to a
Yeah.
conversation with somebody who knows and who provides therapy,
Yeah.
right? Because the reality is a big part of this is about intention. you know
Mhm.
I was talking to my partner the other day about, like, like, oh, these like watches that like actually like measure, like, oh, you walk 10,000
Mhm.
steps or whatever, and then she said actually very interesting that she was like, but that's not exercise is about the intention of setting a certain
Mhm.
amount of time for yourself, for,
Mhm.
physical activity or something similar, meditation, yoga,
Mhm.
whatever we do, or that conversation that we have together.
Yeah.
It's about the intention that we set. If the
Yeah.
intention for us is to connect and to actually recognize the mutual pain, rather than going
Mhm.
home and drink or cry alone, or watch the same show for the 10th time, whatever our coping is, or go for like a 2 marathons in a row, whatever
Mm.
we do to
Yeah.
cope, right? We cope alone. I
Yeah.
feel like we have created a society somehow that is all about, it's about cope, hope, dope, and shop.
Mm.
And we gotta go beyond that. you know we
Mhm.
gotta
Yeah.
go beyond that. We gotta cope together. We gotta have some
Mhm.
hope for our mutual future. Whatever our
Yeah.
past is, the future is the same. There's this beautiful saying, all rivers end in sea. We have to
Mm.
recognize that the end for all of us is the same,
Yeah.
right? So we have to have each other back outside of just the work. And once
Totally.
again, the word of caution is always, please don't try to be each other's counselors, but actually
Yeah.
reach out to people who do that professionally.
Totally. I mean, I think that there's these really cool ways that we can choose to be there for each other. Just again, intention, right? Like
Hmm.
you're calling it, the intention piece actually matters quite substantially. And I think when what we tend towards is these very off the cuff moments
Hmm.
where it becomes like verbal diarrhea, right?
Yeah.
Like I start talking and then it just keeps coming and coming, coming. And sometimes I'll be even in my head being like, shut up. You gotta stop it. You can like see other people's
We've
faces
all
like
been there.
glossing
Yeah.
over. Like I did not know I was signing up for this
Yeah.
when I said, hey, what's up?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
right. And so we've all had those moments, I think, where
Yeah.
we're like, oh, that was too much. I
Yeah.
couldn't stop. I couldn't contain it. When we open those up, for sure, it gets too big and too
Yeah.
much for us. For them, we'll often feel embarrassed afterwards, like we occupied too much space, and maybe
Hmm.
we did. But it's more this piece about entering into it with like, what is my need walking in the door? Like, do I just need to debrief it? Because sometimes we just do need to vent. It's like a pressure
Exactly.
valve, right? Like we just need to relieve and release some amount of the pressure so that I can enter back in and continue about my day.
Hmm.
And if that's
Hmm.
the case, then fine, but I might need to like contain it, right?
Yeah.
So I've
Yeah.
actually done this with friends where I've said, I really need to just like, I call it bitch session. I just need to have a bitch session about this thing. But I know that if I let myself, I can go on about this forever. So I'm going to set a timer on my phone for 10 minutes. I need you to just let me go.
Yeah.
I need you to let me rant and rave and be a crazy person about it for 10 minutes. And then when the
Hmm.
timer goes off, I need you to help me change topics.
Yeah.
So I know that I just need the release of this. And then once that time is up, I need to shift gears and I need you to help me just
Great.
redirect.
Exactly.
Right?
And that's the beauty,
Yeah.
right? Like you're setting the intention, you're telling them what to expect as well, and you are setting the boundaries around it. I think
Totally.
that's the beautiful communication of this is my need, rather
Mm-hmm.
than just pushing down. Like this is what I need.
Yeah.
Like people have behaviors, and we always tell people to change their behaviors, and it doesn't work. And then we are like, whoa, why? Well,
Mm-hmm.
like the behaviors always have feelings underneath. What am I feeling? If I am
Mm-hmm.
feeling elevated at work the moment I show up,
Yeah.
if I am snappy at work, whatever that is, where does that come from? What are the feelings, and what are
Mm-hmm.
the unmet needs underneath?
Yeah.
Maybe the unmet need for some people is, they see sometimes the harshest part of the world,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe they just don't want to know how much danger is out there at every
Yeah.
moment. Maybe
Totally.
they don't want to know how much pain and misery is in this world at every moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's the unmet need, but the feeling
Yeah.
is I'm overwhelmed, I'm burnt out, I feel like I can't, focus, and all of these other stuff. And then the behavior is, well, I drink more than usual. But we
Mm-hmm.
tend to problematize the problem, or I took too much space and I talked about it. I
Yeah.
my the thing about shame and guilt is it's never useful.
Totally.
Right? So if we take that guilt and shame away around I took so much space, and you can still
Mm-hmm.
acknowledge that I did, but I needed it at that moment,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm gonna make amends to this person, get them
Yeah.
cheesecake, or just let them know that I didn't take a lot
Yeah.
of space, and I'm sorry,
Yeah.
but I needed it, and give them permission to do that if they want to as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Yeah.
Right? But as long as we have a backup plan, which includes somebody professional supporting us, providing care for us, just like we provide care for others, we don't shame
Mm-hmm.
our clients for getting care. We shouldn't shame ourselves for getting care either.
Yeah.
Getting care is beautiful. That's what love looks like.
Totally.
And we should not
Totally.
deny ourselves from getting help for our mental health, right?
Yeah.
Or for any type of health.
I mean, the thing is that's always funny to me is we'll do it for everyone else, right? Like
Exactly.
most of the people I know who are like the harshest about counseling for themselves are super quick to put their kids in counseling when they're
Yeah,
struggling with something because they
absolutely.
know that they want the best for their kids and
Yeah,
they know that they can't get them there without professional support. So
yes.
that's like a no-brainer. But
Hmm.
then when it comes to them, they're like, no, I just got to like grit my way through this by the skin of my teeth and suffer every moment.
Absolutely.
Why?
Yeah.
Why are we doing this to
Yeah.
ourselves?
I think we need a huge cultural change as well, right? Like we do have
Mm,
that ultra independence, which partly we get from the US as well, partly we
totally.
get from our, like the dominance of the British culture as well, right? Like
Yes.
since the 70s, it always been about you as an individual, make decisions, make better decisions, and this and that. But
Mhm,
a lot of times we just can't, right? It's not about
mhm.
me getting stronger. There is no way. No human can deal with it, but some humans have to have this job and take care of others. So we need to
Mhm.
create a way that things work. We can't have people working for 5, 10 years and then, or 20 years, whatever that is, and then just completely be depleted.
Yeah.
you know that is just not right. That is not okay. I respect frontline workers and folks too
Mhm.
much to let that happen, right? I just don't think that's right.
Preach, Ash. Preach.
We need
Like,
to kind of
yeah.
change that culture and recognize pain. It is
Yeah.
okay to have pain. It is okay to feel impacted by
Mhm.
experiences around us. And there is, as you said at the beginning of the conversation, there is no judgment about feelings. There's no good or
Yeah.
bad feelings. Just like if you look at a beautiful puppy, you are filled with joy perhaps,
Mhm.
and then you laugh and smile. Seeing somebody who just OD'd, is gonna overdose, is gonna fill you with
Mhm.
grief and rage and
Mhm.
sadness and whatever those feelings are.
Yeah.
There is no judgment about it. We are gonna be impacted. We can't.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I see it is. That's my 2 cents.
I love it. I like your 2 cents. They're great. Okay, this is my last question for
Yes,
you. My
please.
big last question is if you were to speak to students or rookies who are new in helping professions of any sort,
What words of wisdom or advice would you want to share with them or hope that you would have for them to receive to support their career going forward?
That's a good question. Well, I love supervising students for social work, and I teach counseling programs. I really like working with the next generation of folks, providers, care providers, healers,
Yeah.
whatever they call themselves. For me, something that I would share with them is, don't feel like you have to know everything. Don't feel like you have to have figured this out before you start, or 5 years into your career, or 10 years into your career. It
Yeah.
is going to be a constant growth. And,
Yeah.
just like these two beautiful, they say we have two beautiful bunches of rose. We have two beautiful roses. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
If one is doing well and the other one is not doing well, you don't blame the rose. Why aren't you doing well? No,
Yeah.
you change the soil, you look at the light situation, you look at the water situation, you change the conditions to let the other one thrive as well. So if you
Totally.
are not doing well, it's not the rose that you blame, it's not the plants that you blame. It's the conditions that need to be changed. Think about what conditions you want to change, and then hopefully when an opportunity comes up, jump to
Yeah.
a committee meeting or a leadership position, whatever you can to change those conditions. It is not you. We need to have this continuous growth for decades and decades and decades. And the way we provide healthcare in 20 years, or care in general in 20 years, is going to be very different from the way it is today. Just
Yeah.
like today, it's very, very different from what it was 20
Yeah.
years ago. We are going to be part of that
Absolutely.
change. So I will just tell them, give yourself a chance to grow, and don't blame the rose. Change the condition in which that rose is growing.
It's so good. It's so good. Yeah, you're right. I mean, I love that as advice for people who are just starting out and are figuring out how to find their footing in all of this, because it's new and uncomfortable.
Mhm.
And there's such a huge learning curve. It's hard to kind of get to that place where you feel like I'm not questioning myself every
Yeah,
minute that I'm doing the job, in a job that's just very hard and exposed.
absolutely. And we always tend to look at other people, and can pardon my language, but be like, they've got their shit together.
Right?
And if you talk to them and they were honest, nobody
No,
has.
nobody.
Everybody's struggling in different ways.
Yeah,
So
totally. Just ask their therapist. I can tell you.
exactly, just ask their therapist. They'll tell you. Nobody's doing, like, nobody has figured this out.
Totally.
We have people have different struggles, but everybody has his struggles nonetheless.
Yeah, totally. I love it, Ash. Thank you so much
It
for
was my
joining me today
pleasure.
and for your time. It was so much fun getting to chat with you. I feel like you and I would
Thank
have a
you.
really great time having coffee, and we could probably go on for
Absolutely.
hours. I love it.
Absolutely. Love it. Thank you
Uh,
so much for having me. And thank you so much for doing what you do.
thanks.
Taking care of the carers, taking care of people that sometimes don't give themselves permission to be taken care of, is a lot of work. And I really appreciate what you do. And I really appreciate you have a podcast to make sure that these good people, the people that I know and I care about, are well taken care of.
Thanks so much for that. I
My
really
pleasure.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
I want to say one more big thank you to my guest for today. It is so wonderful to get to have this opportunity to talk to some incredible and amazing people who have been out there doing the work, seeing this stuff, and figuring out how to hold it differently. I'm so grateful for the willingness of these incredible people to jump on with me, share their stories, and share with you the various ways that they're learning and finding to move through this kind of work with some amount of sanity intact. I think we can all take something really special from that. As we wrap up today, I want to encourage you to please reach out and connect if you have any questions or feedback. You know I love hearing from you and shaping this podcast to echo your needs and interests. I also love hearing about what you're working on and how you're using what we talk about on the show. You can follow me on Facebook and Instagram at Lindsay A. Foss, or you can email me at support@thrive-life.ca. If you have any feedback for my amazing guest today, please let me know and I'm happy to pass it along. I continue to be so amazed and inspired by this community that we are building and creating together. I'm so grateful for your support and that many of you are so incredibly keen to share about Behind the Line to others on the front lines.
Thank you so much for sharing with those you know. I want to let you know that we do have ways to support sharing. So if you reach out to me, I can send you posters and cards and all kinds of other ways that you can share with your workplace and your colleagues about Behind the Line and our other resources. Also know that you can share any of our social media posts or forward any of our emails that we send you with reminders about the show. We just want more people to be supported. Know that we can be found online on our website, on most major podcast platforms, as well as on YouTube. Many of our summer series episodes will be videotaped, and we will include those recordings on YouTube. So check those out if you want to join us in real life. Click subscribe to get alerts about our latest episodes, or subscribe to our email list to hear from me about all the exciting things we have going on and coming up. You'll find all the details you need in the show notes, and you can access our email list by clicking to get our free Beating the Breaking Point Indicators Checklist and Triage Guide, which helps you facilitate self-assessing burnout and related concerns. We make all of our different resources available to you guys because the work you do really, really matters to our communities, but way more than that, you matter. Your life matters, and the people who matter to you matter. And we want to make sure that you have what you need to keep up the good work at work, but as well in your very real and amazing life outside of the work. So use it and share it. And until next time, stay safe.